Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us this evening. It is one that takes into effect starting from today with this new currency, and in itself, meaning that every other currency has been deemed almost null and void or illegal in that sense. Tell us about the strategy.
Well, it's a bombshell really to many Zimbabweans, because I think when the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtuli announced that we're going to use the so-called RTGS dollar and peg it to the US dollar at 2.5, just barely a month ago, people didn't really believe that it would cause stability in terms of prices. At that stage, I think inflation might have been sitting at about 20-25%. Today, inflation is 97%. This is the official inflation, and according to reports, in-house Old Mutual is pegging inflation at about 125%. So this is really a reminder of 2008, 2007, 2006, when everybody was a billionaire in Zimbabwe or trillionaire.
Well, they were carrying the currency in also, in buckets
in basket, wheelbarrows.
Exactly,
and so
wheelbarrows, right? They were
Yep.
carrying them just to buy a loaf of bread.
Yep.
Do we see this actually happening as a result of the introduction of this RTGS?
Well, certainly I don't see any solution, because what they've done in essence is banned all the basket of foreign currencies that were being used in Zimbabwe, mainly the American dollar, followed by the rand, the pula, and any other hard currencies or tradable currencies. And the problem is you have the RTGS dollar, which is the Zim currency, or pseudo currency, because it's not a currency at all. It won't be tendered in any other country. It was only being traded on the streets. So what that means now is that literally you can't trade. You have to take your foreign currency into either the bank to get it exchanged. It's not a fair rate, and no trader or retailer now is allowed to accept any foreign currency.
Joseph, when you're calling it a pseudo-currency in itself, does that mean that if I've got this RTGS, right, I cannot make a purchase in South Africa, for example, where South Africa will accept the pula or the dollar, etc. In other countries in itself, does then that currency, the Zim currency in itself, become null and void? Or can Zimbabweans, or coming from Zimbabwe, who want to make purchases, as we've seen recently, for a long time now, where they want to make purchases within the country of South Africa, are they able to utilize that currency? Because then that's going to be a telling part.
It's not tradable anywhere in the world. It's
nothing except for Zimbabwe.
Except for Zimbabwe. It's not tradable in Messina. It's not tradable at any border across Zimbabwe. So this is really just a Zimbabwean currency. And today what they're saying is that the bond notes, the bond coins, and the RTGS dollar now form a new currency called the Zim dollar.
And then in that sense, that if it's only tradable in Zimbabwe, is there enough currency to flow? So we've seen a lot when it comes to reports of how currencies actually had a shortage in Zimbabwe in itself, and that not a lot of money was actually flowing within the system. So is this currency accessible to the very same people who are utilizing it within Zimbabwe?
In Zimbabwe, that's the only country where you actually buy money in the streets. So currently, if you had US dollars, you would buy it on the streets. And for you to have the hard so-called currency or not, you have to swap with somebody, either using the equivalent of e-wallet, which is EcoCash, or to do electronic transfer using online, and then somebody gives you cash. So for the rural folk, that just requires basic money to buy bread, to pay for basic necessities. They could not get their currency, and the currency traders, which is the street traders, were certainly taking advantage of that. What that means from today, that market is going to just flourish, and people will pay more and more. You're going to see a little bit of hyperinflation coming through, and also you're going to see retailers fixing their prices possibly twice, if not 3 times a day. So in other words, you could go into the shop to buy sugar in the morning. When you go back in the afternoon,
and then
you
it's
see
R9.
a different price. Yes.
Then in that sense in itself, I mean, does that mean that we're going to be seeing an economic strategy that is doomed from the beginning on behalf of Zimbabwe? Because surely this is a way of mitigating and trying to get some currency flowing within the economy in itself, and perhaps even revitalizing the economy, which we've seen several hard knocks.
So you can only revive or make a current stand if it is tradable or acceptable as a medium of exchange for goods and services outside your country. That's the first point. And secondly, you need to make sure that it's backed by production. Okay. Now, the same thing here. If the GDP is coming down and there's not enough production, then your currency become vulnerable to external factors. Whereas in the case of Zimbabwe, if we are not exporting, if Zimbabwe is not exporting, there's no way they're able to introduce a currency that is stable and that could basically stabilize issues and prices for Zimbabweans. So they're going to suffer. They're going to suffer as they've been doing over the last 20 years.
Why do you paint such a bleak picture for us on this Monday evening? We're supposed to be motivational, Joseph, but thanks a lot for joining us and shedding some light in terms of the status really of Zimbabwe, and also this introduction of the RTGS. So that is the new currency that is officially trading in Zimbabwe as from today.